FNCS Grand Finals Day 1 is over. I want to explain everything that's happened. What is going on with all of the North zones? Is it just RNG or is there something else going on and Epic has actually scripted them? We also have Peterbot making a super aggressive play onto Clix, people saying he was griefing and stream sniping, and big names struggling like Mr. Savage and what it means for the rest of their FNCS. There's a lot to talk about. Let's jump into it. Now, before we even talk about who plays where, we have to talk about the big topic. What is going on with the zones? You probably heard something about this, and it's hard to tell whether the zones are actually being biased, whether they're rigged, or whether pros are just, making excuses. And I've seen that in the past. Pros get like 1 or 2 max zones and say, oh, I never got a zone. They're terrible, man. Epic doesn't want me to win. This time around, though, I don't know what's happening, and there are some rumors and there are some suspicions that this is not an accident, but I'm going to show you how the zones went on EU. As you can see, a very clear bias to the northeast, but when you look at the NA zones, it gets even worse potentially. We at least got 1 south zone, but we got 4 zones finishing on Magic Mosses, like the exact spot of Magic Mosses. We had 1 go over near the Whiffy Wharf. So of 12 zones across 2 regions, 10 of them went north, not just a little bit north, far north. Now, probably thinking about like Aussie, that's probably just like, chance is probably just RNG. I mean, like, sometimes I like to believe that. I don't think Fortnite here is sitting here scripting zones in grands. People seem to think that like they'll give a zone to one team because they want another team to win and this and that. I don't believe that. But I do believe, and this has happened in the past, that Fortnite does predict zones and change them based on other things in the game. So we've had a period during the Nitro season, during the Desert season, where there was an area of the map that became like a black zone where the zone physically could not finish there, which massively impacted how the zones could go around that and where they would pull. Because there's no chance the zone finishing there, it meant that zones had a high propensity to pull north. They had way more likely to go north to avoid that spot. But the other thing we've seen Fortnite do in the past is deliberately make zones finishing in an area because they either have an event on or something they want to show off, whether it's a new POI or there's something they want to get players to realize and go towards to try to build hype for something. And that is exactly what's going on right now at Magic Mosses. If you play a public match at Magic Mosses right now, you see this giant lightning bolt thing. Where is this on the map? Magic Mosses. So there is something going on the far north of the map, especially around Magic Mosses, that they're trying to develop hype for coming into the new season. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we had 4 games on NA Central all finish at Magic Mosses and 10 games out of 12 go north. By the way, I watched NA West after NA Central, and I think 4 of the 6 zones also went north. So if we want to go so far, I think pretty much 14 of 18 zones have gone north. Like, it's just getting ridiculous, and because of this obviously really affected how well teams could do. Now, this is what I hate about when zones do this. It's like what happened when Cooper Mero won LAN and we had a bunch of the zones finish there. Now it's going to make a bunch of people say that, oh, this team doesn't deserve to win because they got lucky zones, or that team's doing poorly and it's only because of the zones. It's really hard to judge who's actually doing well, but that's just how battle royales go. Unfortunately, zone luck and RNG on spawn is just part of it. It just sucks when it's this bad because you have to talk about it. And people are saying it's making the grand finals a little bit boring. I disagree. The grand finals was boring. I think it was super exciting, especially the finish on NA. I'll talk about it in a second. But when you've got fan favorite teams like Mr. Savage, like Canada, like Acorn's teams all dropping on the south of the map, it really does just feel like they had almost no chance at a proper grands, at least so far. It's only day 1 of 2, but I know I had to at least talk about the zones because everyone's been talking about them and they do look kind of ridiculous. Now, let's look at how FNCS actually went. Again, it's worth pointing out there is no multiplier coming into day 2, unfortunately. So there is no 1.5 times multiplier. If there's a team you're cheering for who got bad luck on day 1 or didn't do as well, they can still bring it back on day 2. We're only 50% of the way through, but there is no multiplier anymore. So let's kick off talking about NA. Now, we have first place, no surprise, but Ritual Cold Peterbot first on 462, but we actually had Clix, who is now in second, first place until the very last game. Clix is now in second on 411, and we saw Peterbot make a very aggressive play that's upset a lot of people. I thought it was insane, but we actually had Peter and Cold give the medallion to Ritual to make it look like Peter wasn't anywhere near them because everyone's used to Peterbot holding the medallion. This kind of put Batman Booger into a false sense of security because there's no medallion near him. Peterbot snuck up on him with Cold, jumped on him, took down Batman Booger. Clix tried to help him, couldn't get there in time. Clix had to run away while Yomzo hid. Then they found Clix, took Clix down. Then Yomzo managed to get out, go to Crime City and buy the reboot cards back, got them back in the game. Then Peterbot found them over near Foxy Floodgate and took them down, causing Clix to have a 0-point game. And then Peterbot's team went on to get a 13 Elam 6th, which was a very big point game, to overtake them. It was a huge point swing on the leaderboard. It's upset a lot of people, but the logic I always go back to, again, I love Clix, I love Peterbot, I just want to see exciting Fortnite, and I always go back to the same logic. I don't call it a grief. If it negatively impacts another team, but it positively impacts your game, I don't call that a grief. But if you're trying to negatively impact another player's game and it negatively impacts yours, let's say like, you know, a team in last place, landing on first place, holding them in zone, they're not trying to win the tournament or increase their points or make money. They're just trying to grief someone. Peterbot taking down the team that's above him on the leaderboard, making him have a 0-point game and then jump above him. That's just good gameplay. It's obviously going to upset the Clix fans. I get it. I know. But now if Clix wins this FNCS, we can truly say that Clix earned it. Pete is taking the fight to him. And now coming into day 2, I would love to see Clix take the pain to Peterbot. If Clix starts pushing Peterbot and taking some aggressive mid-game fights and they win it, it is going to make this Grands even more exciting. So I know if you're a Clix fan, it was hard to watch. But again, I think it's just good gameplay from Peterbot. But a lot of people are saying maybe Peterbot showed his hand too early. You know, doing it in game 6 rather than game 11 or game 12 could mean that Clix can now retaliate. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. We have 2 of the biggest teams on the region going at it right now, absolutely dominating. And there is a pretty big gap between Clix and the 3rd place team, Visuals, Braids, and Aminish. Now, Visuals, Braids, and Aminish actually won the last game of the day, the first South Zone we got, and they got an 8 Elam win. But right now, as far as the big names go, it is Clix versus Peterbot. Now, remember, top 3 teams are going to make land, except for the teams that already have a land spot. So if Peter and hopefully Acorn can jump up in there, it will roll down to top 5. But right now, Clix is looking very, very good for that land spot. They're playing excellent. Again, people pointing out Clix's team did get a lot of favorable zones. They dropped Lone Wolf Lair. Magic Moss is right next to it, but they still played really, really good Fortnite. It was the different kind of Fortnite I talked about. They're not going into the black market almost any of their games. They're just basing up on top of Lone Wolf, getting their surge tags, and then rotating over. On the topic of surge tags and surge trading, apparently it is just a strategy in Fortnite now that we don't even need to pretend isn't happening, because the Fortnite broadcast did an entire segment on surge trading. They talked about building large bases on top of your POIs, taking the extra meds out of your base, putting them on top of the base, and then dealing damage to other players and trying to get them to get tags on you by making them over peak. Like, my mind is just blown at this point. I guess if there was any thought that maybe Fortnite would action this, whether they'd start banning people, whether they'd change Storm Surge, that is out the window. At this point, the only way they're going to be able to fix this is by reworking Storm Surge. Because if we're talking about it and you know, it's a strategy, Fortnite is clearly okay with it. It's an effective strategy, so pros are obviously going to abuse it. So it's just the norm now. The only way I guess Fortnite's ever going to be able to action it now is if they can prove that a player actually colluded by DMing another player. Like, hey man, set up on the mountain, it's second zone, I'll take shots at you. Unless we're doing that, if we're just doing the normal trading that most pros do, where they just build up and look for players around them because they know where they're going to be, apparently that's fair game now. So Clix's team definitely utilizing that strategy on top of Lone Wolf, but so are all the other top teams on the leaderboard. We have Visuals, Braids, and Minished in 3rd. Like I said, Reed, Cooper, and Curly in 4th. They're loving the zones out of Flooded Frogs right now on 363, but it is worth pointing out they had a phenomenal game 6 when the zones pulled south as well, an 8 Elam 5th. So I'm really hoping if we do start to get some more south zones, Reed, Cooper, and Curly can hold on to their dominance. Rapid, Booga, and Threats finishing inside the top 5 as well. Their last game, unfortunately their worst game, but they're still in the running for land right now. Muzz, Yapko, and Rise getting surprise contested on the first game of the day, but bringing it back, still doing well that game, and then going on to have a really, really good finish, getting a second, first, and second from second game 3, 4, and 5, doing really, really well. We had Ages, Acorn, and Poyo. Now, the team that a lot of people had picked to be, you know, first or second, I had them picked in second. Again, Mast Meadows is a pretty long rotate to Magic Mosses. I did still expect to see them to play a little bit better despite all the North zones. It is worth pointing out they got a 3 Elam 7th in their last game, but they did get a 12 Elam 3rd in their second last game. So as the day went on, as they played more and more North zones, it seems like they figured out how they're going to play it. We then had Kanata, Bolt, and Sphinx finishing in 9th. I know I've skipped Taki, I'll get there. They got a 12 Elam 2nd in their last game. So again, Hopeful Heights, an absolute trek to Magic Mosses. So Kanata's team, 12 Elam 2nd in the one good zone they got. I also wanted to point out, Kanata made this tweet, and it really does sum up Kanata's RNG. This has all happened within the last year, by the way. So my yacht blows up, Boombo's taken out, Cactus taken out 2 days before Grands. Only team to not play with Mythic Mask day 1 on all regions, because that's when he was a Demon Dojo, NA bugged and he didn't get the Mythic Mask. And now there's an event in pubs that makes every zone pull Mosses, and my PY is blowing up next season. Who did I upset? And honestly, that really sums up where Canada's at right now. My man is getting pretty unlucky, but 9th place is still not terrible. They can bring it back. Like I said, one South Zone, they did amazing. We have Taki, Ishu, and Vert. And by the way, Taki and Ishu, this is their first ever grand finals in 8th place. They're doing extremely well as well. And then rounding out the top 10, Shadow Curve and Tyler out of Demon's Dojo. But you can notice this is a lot of North teams. Most of the POIs that are doing well right now on NA are the North teams. Teams like Bucky down to the fields, they're in 15th. But again, on the one South Zone they got a 5 elim 3rd. So I don't want to kind of talk about the zones too much. It sucks, but it is a very relevant factor. We have a lot of really big teams who performed seasons on seasons doing poorly with other teams in a similar situation. So Fortnite, I don't know what's going on. I hope it's just bad luck, and I'm hoping we get normal zones on day 2 because it's so much more fun to watch as well. It's not just, you know, which teams do well. I just felt like the whole of NA's endgames just blurred together in my brain because it was just magic mosses and magic mosses. Couple mountain zones, couple water zones would be so much more fun to watch. Moving on over to EU, we had a very, very spicy grand finals. To kick off, before we even talk about leaderboard, we have to talk about whatever was happening with Veno. In case you guys missed it, Veno was supposed to be contesting Phronoxy at Mars Meadows. I talked about how Vico was in my stream doing the whole like, oh man, Grands is over, we're gonna dud, like it is what it is, we'll do our best, but it's not looking good. Vico never talks like that, and I got suspicious, and it turns out it was a fake. Vico was trying to fake everyone out. They had no intention of going Mars Meadows. I think they dropped 4 different locations in the 6 games. And they dropped Pump Power 2 of the games. I think they dropped South of Outlaw 2 of the games. One game they went Whiffy Wharf, and then one game they keyed into Seaport. Like, Veno was making no friends. They were lurking into the Crime City Vault. They were lurking in the Seaport Vault. They were taking scrappy fights with anyone they could to get the loot they needed, and it has them in 6th place right now. And I'm seeing a lot of people have mixed opinions of this. Some people saying, yo, Veno's ruining his rep. He's annoying all these teams. He's got a land spot. He should just lock down a POI. Why is he not just fighting Phronoxy for Mars Meadows? But Phronoxy has no intention of leaving. He made that very, very clear. So I like Veno pulling out this strategy. A lot of times we see, you know, pros locked into these off-spawn situations, and we always talk about, like, where are they supposed to go? It feels like they have no real option. Well, apparently you do. You can pull out crazy strats like this. Unfortunately, you have to be one of the best fighting teams in the world. All 3 of you have to be phenomenal. You have to then also have a land spot already guaranteed. You don't have to worry about whether you do somehow not pull it off. But 6th place right now, playing the way they are, is phenomenal, especially considering their last game they went down on spawn in 33rd. They were in 2nd place until that last game. Veno playing like this made EU Grand so fun to watch. Every early and mid game was so exciting, just seeing where Veno was going to pop up and who they were going to take on. They clearly had no friends, no allegiances. Like I said, they fought Tace and Veno's ex-teammates. They fought Queasy. They fought so many different teams. It has now obviously, you know, kind of affected some of those teams on the leaderboard. Pix, Dharm, and Damus, who are supposed to be uncontested Pump Power, struggling now. They're doing a lot worse than what a lot of people expected, myself included. But again, hard to kind of manage when you are getting contested by such good teams. But top of the leaderboard, we have a pretty large lead right now, a very solid lead. Ping, Wox, and Malibuka out of Lone Wolf Lair. They were really good at the start of the season, went a little bit quiet. A lot of people were confused why I put them in my 2nd pace spread, but they are doing amazing. 432 points, 6 matches, winning 1 of them, but having an average place of 4th with an average items of 6.3. Insanely consistent, not a single game outside the top 10. They have really dialed in the strategy, looking really good. Again, it gave me a lot of hope for Clix going into NA after they pulled off such a big performance. So that's a 120-point lead. Each elim is worth 4 points though, and a win is 65. So they can still bring it back, but without the multiplier, that's a really, really good lead going into day 2. We have Vanya, Pixie, and Murray's, who are in 2nd place right now. They're dropping Flooded Frogs. Again, 2 North teams right now doing very, very well on 313. They won 2 of the 6 matches they played. Vanya's team a little bit less consistent. They had a 26th and a 20th, but those 2 wins and a 3rd place, one of the wins being a 14 elim win, is really putting them up there on the leaderboard right now. Huge shout out to Chino, Pablo, and Phronoxy. 3rd place from Mars Meadows, so opposite side of the map to all these North zones. And again, they locked down Mars Meadows. They held it down, proving that they, you know, deserve the drop spot. They're now locked in potentially for a land spot as long as they keep this up, and doing amazing. So it's great to see what was going to be just a full griefed 50-50, where most people had, you know, Phronoxy and Veno both picked to do terrible. We now have them in 3rd and 6th place because they changed up the strategies. It's been really awesome to see. We have Swizzy, Queasy, and Mustache in 4th place out of Seaport. Again, that one game where Veno fought them was their 27th, by far their worst game. If you take that game out, they're actually doing really, really well and would have been much higher, probably in second place. So we'll have to see how that goes, whether Venno makes more plays on Queasy. Maybe they'll be more aware of it this time. They clearly had no idea Venno was making that play on them. Then we have Thomas, Uppel, and Panzer in 5th out of the fields. Thomas HD did more damage with the drum gun than any other player in the lobby with all their guns combined. Just insane. More damage with one gun than other players with their entire loadout. Just playing phenomenally well right now, doing what Thomas does. We had Vico, Venno, Flixie in 6th, like I said. Then we had Pink, Nebs, and Kiro in 7th out of Demon Dojo, looking really, really hot again. Seti, Hari, and Kami out of Brutal Box Cars in 8th. iDrop, Sky, and Scroll in 9th. They started really strong, but again, seems to be a story with iDrop's team. They start strong and they finish slow. I really hope they break that curse with day 2 and they have a really good day 2 and skyrocket up the leaderboard. But right now, struggling a little bit. And then in 10th place, we have Giras. Now, again, no mention of Mr. Savage. It was a rough day. They're in 18th place right now. They are contested on the mountain, but they managed to win the first 3 games of Spawn on the mountain, making Twi's team leave. Twi's team is now dropping on Pump Power. They were on 0 points, the big donut after 3 games. They're now contesting Pix, Dam, and Damus over the Pump Power, taking a bit of the split of their loot. And Savage now has an uncon. So you're probably thinking things are looking good. Savage gonna pop off. Not really. They still have Cade's team taking a lot of their loot to the south, and then all the zones pulling far north is just ruining them. One of the biggest issues with their split is it takes so long to loot. They have to fight the team to their south if they want any of the good loot, but if they do that, that takes even longer time, and then they're just running simulated north zones. If we start getting some south zones, Savage, Vidil, and Rezone can definitely bring this back and do well. A land qual is going to be pretty crazy, but if you watched any of Savage's stream, you know the vibes towards the end of day 1, they were very rough. They just were having a terrible day. Again, the zones just weren't it. A lot of teams pointing out as well, because there is so much trading going on, the surge threshold is so high, so the far zones feel even more impossible because you're trying to get there, and then once you get there, you're 500 below, even with 3 or 4 kills. Like, it's feeling a little bit rough for some of these teams, and I definitely get that frustration. We'll see if they can bring it back and hopefully do something big on day 2. In other competitive news, we had some big org signings. We had Faxity joining Exit as a content creator, so Exit has now signed Batman Booger and Faxity in the last 7 days. Clix did promise he had 2 big signings, and these definitely lived up to the hype. And then we had Chronic coming back. I didn't realize Chronic was still kind of around like that, making some big signings. Chronic has now signed Rapid, Donnie, Aminished, Barker, Polus, and 20. And apparently in 20's announcement, they mentioned that he was one of 20 signings they're going to be announcing. So Chronic is coming back with big signings. Now, I don't really know exactly how Chronic works these days. No, back in the day, it was more kind of like a friend group and a clan where it kind of built up all your reputation. You would stay in the org and rep it, kind of build up their brand, make your content, make their content. And then if you sign to another org, you would join that. So I don't know if they're now like kind of positioning themselves as more of a standard org and they're going to make more content and maybe bring on sponsors and stuff, but they're getting a lot of hype by signing some really big names, and anyone who's willing to support players in the scene, I'm happy about. Chronic's been around for a long time now, really good reputation, so it's cool to see them making big moves again.